I met the woman who would teach me that sometimes the most painful lessons come from the people we trust most at a community film festival in downtown Phoenix, where the autumn evening was perfect for outdoor screenings under a canopy of stars that seemed to promise new beginnings. I decided to check out an independent documentary about urban farming after a long week of consulting work on cybersecurity protocols for various tech companies, hoping to unwind and maybe learn something interesting about sustainable agriculture. I was standing in line for street tacos from one of the local vendors when this woman in front of me started chatting with the vendor in fluent Spanish, laughing at something he said about the extra spicy salsa and asking detailed questions about the ingredients in the homemade hot sauce with genuine curiosity that immediately caught my attention. When she turned around to survey the festival grounds while waiting for her order, I noticed she had this genuine smile that reached her eyes and was wearing a faded vintage band t-shirt from Arcade Fire, a group I'd seen live during my college years and still listened to regularly when I needed music that matched my contemplative moods. I complimented her taste in music, and she immediately lit up with enthusiasm, telling me about how she discovered them through a friend's carefully curated playlist and had been obsessed with their layered soundscapes ever since, even going so far as to learn some of their more complex songs on guitar during quiet Sunday afternoons. We ended up sitting together during the documentary screening, sharing a large container of loaded nachos and whispering thoughtful observations about the filmmaker's innovative techniques and the absolutely fascinating urban community gardens featured throughout the film, creating this immediate sense of intellectual connection that I hadn't experienced in months of casual dating. Her name was Olivia, she was 28 years old, and she worked as a content creator for a small but well-respected digital marketing firm that exclusively handled accounts for local art galleries, independent boutique shops, and community organizations around the Phoenix metropolitan area. What struck me most about her during those first few hours was how genuinely unimpressed she seemed by material possessions or status symbols, how she appreciated the authentic street food and the grassroots nature of the film festival instead of complaining about the metal folding chairs or the slightly uneven audio quality that had some other attendees grumbling and checking their phones constantly. After the documentary screening ended, we walked around the festival grounds for nearly an hour, talking about everything from childhood dreams of becoming marine biologists to elaborate theories about parallel universes and whether our alternate selves were having the same conversation somewhere else in the multiverse, finding ourselves lost in conversation that felt both profound and playfully silly. I found myself more intellectually engaged and emotionally present in conversation than I'd been in months of casual dating and professional networking events that usually left me feeling drained rather than energized. She mentioned that she genuinely preferred hole-in-the-wall restaurants to fancy establishments because the food was usually more authentic and flavorful, and the atmosphere felt more real and unpretentious, which resonated with my own values completely and made me wonder if I'd finally met someone who understood that the best experiences weren't necessarily the most expensive ones. When I suggested we grab dinner at this tiny family-owned Mexican place I'd discovered that served the most incredible carnitas in the entire city, she immediately agreed with genuine enthusiasm, and we ended up spending the next 3.5 hours talking over cheap Tecate beer and sharing multiple plates of food that cost less than most people spend on their daily coffee drinks but tasted better than anything I'd eaten at expensive restaurants. She seemed genuinely fascinated by my work developing security protocols for technology companies, asking thoughtful and informed questions about cybersecurity challenges and data protection rather than just nodding politely like most people do when I mention my somewhat technical field, and I appreciated that she took the time to understand what I actually did rather than making assumptions. I was particularly impressed that she drove a well-maintained older Toyota Corolla that she'd clearly taken excellent care of and didn't seem even slightly self-conscious about it, especially when I mentioned that I drove a Honda Civic from 2015 that I'd purchased used and kept in pristine mechanical condition because I believed in taking care of things that worked well. For our second official date, we explored the sprawling farmers market in downtown Phoenix, carefully selecting fresh ingredients to cook dinner together at my modest one-bedroom apartment in Tempe. And she actually seemed genuinely excited about the prospect of preparing a home-cooked meal together rather than disappointed that I wasn't taking her to some expensive restaurant with celebrity chefs and Instagram-worthy presentation. The entire first year of our relationship was built on simple pleasures that felt refreshingly authentic and meaningful in a world that often seemed obsessed with surface-level impressions, like attending free outdoor concerts in the park where we'd bring a worn blanket and a bottle of wine that cost less than $12, discovering new hiking trails throughout the diverse landscape around the Phoenix area, and spending leisurely Saturday mornings browsing through used bookstores and thrift shops looking for hidden treasures and vintage finds. Olivia genuinely appreciated that I wore vintage band t-shirts and well-worn jeans instead of designer clothes, and she seemed to truly enjoy our low-key lifestyle, often commenting that she felt more relaxed and authentically herself when we were just hanging out at home watching documentaries or exploring the city without any pressure to impress other people or maintain some kind of expensive social facade. I started to believe with growing certainty that I'd finally found someone who valued character over financial status, someone who appreciated authenticity over appearances, and someone who wanted to build something real and lasting together based on who we actually were as individuals rather than what we could afford to buy or where we could afford to be seen by others. During those early months, Olivia would often express genuine admiration for my practical approach to life, commenting on how refreshing it was to be with someone who wasn't constantly trying to impress people or compete with others through material acquisitions. And she told me stories about previous relationships with men who seemed more interested in showing off their expensive cars or designer clothes than actually getting to know her as a person. She appreciated that I focused on experiences and conversations instead of status symbols, and I remember one particularly memorable evening when we spent 4 hours at a tiny independent bookstore cafe, sharing a single piece of chocolate cake and debating the philosophical implications of artificial intelligence while rain tapped against the windows and jazz music played softly in the background. She laughed at my terrible jokes, engaged enthusiastically with my somewhat nerdy interests in technology and science fiction, and seemed genuinely content with our simple but meaningful connection. I found myself thinking that I'd finally met someone who understood that the best things in life weren't necessarily the most expensive ones, and that real intimacy came from shared values and genuine compatibility rather than matching credit card limits or social media-worthy lifestyle choices. What Olivia didn't know, and what I hadn't told anyone in Phoenix except my financial advisor and tax attorney, was that my modest lifestyle was a deliberate choice rather than a financial necessity born from circumstances beyond my control. 4 years earlier, I had sold my cybersecurity company for $35 million after building it from a one-person operation in my college apartment into a team of 47 employees with contracts protecting renewable energy companies across the southwestern United States from increasingly sophisticated cyber threats. The sale had been the culmination of 8 years of 18-hour workdays, endless nights debugging code and developing proprietary security protocols, and the constant stress of competing against much larger firms with significantly deeper pockets and more established reputations in the industry. I had started the company during my final semester of computer science graduate school, initially offering penetration testing and vulnerability assessments to local businesses that couldn't afford the major consulting firms, but gradually expanding into comprehensive security infrastructure design for emerging clean energy technologies that were becoming targets for state-sponsored hackers and industrial espionage. The timing had been perfect as solar and wind energy companies were experiencing explosive growth but desperately needed protection against increasingly sophisticated cyber attacks targeting their grid integration systems and proprietary technology. When Meridian Technologies approached me with their acquisition offer, I almost couldn't believe the number they presented, but their due diligence confirmed that my proprietary security protocols had become essential infrastructure for renewable energy installations across Arizona, Nevada, and Southern California, making my company far more valuable than I had initially realized. However, the real reason I maintained such a modest lifestyle despite having more money than I could spend in several lifetimes stemmed from watching wealth destroy my family during my teenage years in Ohio, an experience that had shaped my fundamental understanding of how money could poison even the strongest relationships if people weren't careful about maintaining their core values and priorities. My father had been a middle-class electrical engineer working for a mid-sized manufacturing company until he developed a revolutionary battery management system for early electric vehicles during the early 2000s, when the automotive industry was just beginning to explore alternatives to traditional combustion engines. When Toyota and Ford entered a bidding war for the patent rights, our family went from comfortable middle-class life to sudden wealth almost overnight, and the transformation was absolutely devastating to witness as a teenager trying to understand how money could change people so fundamentally. I watched my parents' marriage crumble as friends became investors seeking opportunities, family dinners became networking events with potential business partners, and authentic relationships disappeared behind a facade of wealth-based social hierarchies and transactional interactions that left no room for genuine connection or love. My mother started spending enormous amounts of money on designer clothes and expensive cars to fit in with other wealthy wives in our new social circle, while my father became obsessed with making even more money through increasingly risky investments and business ventures that consumed all of his time and attention. The house I grew up in, a modest 3-bedroom ranch that had been filled with laughter and family traditions, was replaced with a massive mansion in an exclusive gated community where neighbors competed over who could throw the most extravagant parties and display the most expensive status symbols instead of actually getting to know each other as human beings. By the time I graduated from high school, my parents barely spoke to each other except through their respective teams of lawyers and financial advisors, and I had learned firsthand that sudden wealth could poison even the strongest relationships if people weren't careful about maintaining their values and priorities in the face of unlimited material possibilities. The divorce proceedings lasted 3 years and cost more than most people earn in their entire lifetimes, with both parents more concerned about winning financial victories than preserving any remnant of the love they had once shared or considering the impact on their children who were watching their family disintegrate over money and pride. After witnessing that destruction and seeing how quickly genuine love could be replaced by greed and status competition, I made a conscious decision to live below my means regardless of my actual financial situation, determined to find love based on character and compatibility rather than bank account balances and the ability to fund someone else's lifestyle fantasies. I continued living in my small but comfortable apartment in Tempe, shopping at thrift stores and discount retailers, and working selective consulting projects with clean energy startups that excited me intellectually rather than just financially, choosing projects based on their potential impact rather than their profit margins. My current project involved developing advanced security protocols for a revolutionary solar panel manufacturer that had created a breakthrough in energy storage technology, and I genuinely loved the work because it felt meaningful and impactful rather than just profitable, giving me the satisfaction of contributing to solutions for climate change while using my expertise in cybersecurity to protect innovations that could help save the planet. The first crack appeared 18 months into our relationship through Olivia's friend group, a collection of status-obsessed women who measured their worth entirely through their partner's achievements and material possessions, creating a toxic environment that gradually began to poison the authentic connection we had originally built together. Chelsea worked in pharmaceutical sales and had somehow managed to transform her moderately successful career into a platform for constant bragging about her boyfriend Derek's position as a corporate lawyer at a mid-tier firm downtown, detailing their expensive ski trips to Aspen during winter break and the BMW he'd recently purchased with what was probably a loan that stretched his finances to the breaking point. Every conversation with Chelsea inevitably circled back to their lavish lifestyle, the designer handbags he bought her for various occasions that she treated like military medals proving her relationship superiority, and the exclusive restaurants they frequented that required reservations weeks in advance and cost more per meal than most people spent on groceries in a month. Meanwhile, Arya had married an orthopedic surgeon during a lavish destination wedding in Cabo that she still referenced in casual conversation 2 years later, and she had completely transformed her entire identity around being a doctor's wife, name-dropping his profession in every conversation and planning elaborate dinner parties at their sprawling Scottsdale home that served as showcases for their expensive lifestyle and social connections. The third member of this toxic trio was Jessica, who worked in luxury real estate and dated a series of wealthy men she met through work, each relationship lasting exactly as long as it took her to extract maximum financial benefit before moving on to someone with a higher net worth or better social connections, treating romance like a business transaction where emotional investment was measured against material returns. These women met religiously every Tuesday for expensive brunches at trendy restaurants in Old Town Scottsdale, turning every gathering into a competition about whose lifestyle appeared more successful on social media, posting carefully curated photos of their meals that cost more than most people spent on groceries in a week, and discussing their partner's achievements like stock portfolios being compared for performance. I started noticing changes in Olivia's behavior after these weekly gatherings, subtle at first but gradually becoming more pronounced as the months passed, and the constant exposure to their materialistic values began to erode the simple pleasures and authentic connections that had originally drawn us together. She would come home from brunch with this restless energy, making comments about how we never went anywhere expensive or how my wardrobe needed updating to reflect a more successful image, suggestions that felt completely out of character for the woman who had initially appreciated my vintage band t-shirts and practical approach to spending money on experiences rather than status symbols. The shift became more obvious when she started questioning why I seemed content with what she began calling just getting by, asking why I didn't pursue more ambitious career moves or consider starting another company that could really make some serious money and provide the kind of lifestyle that would impress her increasingly judgmental friend group. I tried explaining that I enjoyed the flexibility of consulting work and the ability to choose projects that genuinely interested me rather than just chasing maximum profit, but she would get this glazed look in her eyes like I was speaking a foreign language, as if the concept of choosing meaningful work over financial gain was completely incomprehensible to someone who had been gradually indoctrinated into believing that worth was measured by net worth. The influence of her friends was becoming increasingly toxic, and I could see her starting to view our relationship through their lens of material success and social status rather than the authentic connection we had originally built together based on shared values and genuine compatibility. She began making subtle comparisons between our modest date nights and the elaborate experiences her friends' boyfriends provided, commenting on how Derek had surprised Chelsea with a weekend trip to wine country or how Aria's husband had bought her a tennis bracelet just because it was Thursday, as if random expensive gestures were the primary indicators of love and commitment rather than consistent care and genuine emotional connection. The woman who had once laughed at the idea of spending $40 on a single cocktail was now suggesting we try the new rooftop bar downtown where drinks started at $25 and the dress code required clothes I didn't own, completely abandoning the hole-in-the-wall establishments where we had built our strongest memories together. The breaking point came at Olivia's company's annual holiday party, held at an upscale contemporary art gallery in downtown Phoenix, where the collision between my carefully maintained modest appearance and her friend's shallow materialism created a perfect storm of humiliation that would change everything between us forever. I had chosen to wear my best thrift store button-down shirt, a classic navy piece that was well-made and had aged beautifully but was clearly not designer, paired with comfortable leather shoes that were well-maintained and polished but obviously several years old and showing the honest wear of someone who walked places rather than driving everywhere in luxury vehicles. What I thought was appropriately dressed for a professional gathering immediately became ammunition for Chelsea and her toxic crew the moment we walked through the gallery doors into the sophisticated space filled with contemporary art and Phoenix's cultural elite. The gallery itself was impressive, with soaring ceilings and carefully curated exhibitions that showcased local and international artists exploring themes of sustainability and environmental consciousness, ironically making it the perfect venue for what would become a lesson about the difference between surface appearances and genuine substance. Chelsea took one look at my outfit and made her first cutting remark within earshot of several other guests, loudly asking Olivia why she continued dating someone who dressed like an unpaid intern when Derek had just bought her a designer purse worth more than most people's monthly rent, as if a person's value could be measured by the price tags on their clothing rather than their character or contributions to society. The mockery escalated quickly as Aria joined in with fake concern, suggesting that Olivia could easily find a successful man at the event and pointing out various attendees and making comments about their expensive watches, designer suits, and obvious markers of financial success that supposedly made them more suitable partners than someone who chose comfort and practicality over conspicuous consumption. I watched as other people at the party began to notice the conversation, some looking genuinely uncomfortable at the public nature of the humiliation while others seemed entertained by the spectacle of a group of women systematically tearing down someone's appearance and financial status for sport, creating an audience for what should have been a private matter between people who supposedly cared about each other. What hurt most wasn't their cruel comments about my clothes or their obvious attempts to embarrass me in front of Olivia's professional colleagues and industry contacts, but rather Olivia's complete failure to defend me or shut down their behavior when she had the power to end it with a single word. Instead of standing up for the man she claimed to love and had supposedly built a meaningful relationship with over nearly 2 years, she not only failed to defend me but actively participated in the ridicule, laughing along with their jokes and making her own comments about how I lacked ambition and financial planning skills, as if my choice to live modestly was evidence of personal failure rather than deliberate values. The conversation became increasingly cruel as her friends treated me like a charity case that Olivia had inexplicably chosen to bring to a respectable social gathering, while Olivia agreed that she deserved someone who could actually afford to take her to nice places and provide the kind of lifestyle her friends enjoyed with their successful partners who understood the importance of image and status in professional circles. I stood there listening to the woman I had been planning to propose to essentially agree with her friend's assessment that I was inadequate, financially unsuccessful, and ultimately not marriage material for someone like her who deserved better things in life than what a modest consultant could provide. The gallery was filled with expensive contemporary art pieces, successful professionals networking over champagne that probably cost more per bottle than I typically spent on groceries in a week, and here I was being systematically torn down by a group of women who measured human worth entirely by bank account balances and material possessions rather than character or genuine connection. The irony wasn't lost on me that these women were criticizing my financial situation while I sat on more money than any of them would likely see in their lifetimes, but their shallow materialism and Olivia's willingness to participate in publicly humiliating me revealed everything I needed to know about who she really was underneath the facade I had fallen in love with during those early months when she had seemed to appreciate authenticity over appearances. The gallery suddenly buzzed with excitement as Victoria Chin, a billionaire tech entrepreneur and renewable energy pioneer, entered with her executive team for a private viewing of the sustainability-themed art exhibition that was the centerpiece of the evening's cultural event. I recognized her immediately from industry publications and renewable energy conferences, where she was frequently featured as one of the most innovative minds in clean technology development and environmental sustainability initiatives that were reshaping how the world thought about energy production and consumption. Victoria had built her fortune through a series of groundbreaking companies focused on solar energy infrastructure, wind power optimization, and most recently, revolutionary battery storage systems that were transforming how renewable energy could be distributed and stored efficiently for use during peak demand periods. Her presence at the gallery immediately commanded attention from the other guests, many of whom recognized her from magazine covers and technology conferences where she was often the keynote speaker discussing the future of sustainable energy and environmental conservation. She spotted me across the gallery and approached with genuine enthusiasm, her face lighting up as she recognized me from our previous professional interactions and ongoing business partnership that had been generating significant buzz in the renewable energy industry and environmental investment circles. The conversation around me fell silent as Victoria reached our small group and addressed me directly, completely unaware of the toxic dynamic that had been unfolding moments before her arrival, speaking with the kind of respect and professional admiration that immediately commanded attention from everyone within earshot, including Olivia's friends who suddenly found themselves in the presence of actual wealth and influence. She immediately began discussing our ongoing partnership for a groundbreaking solar energy storage system that had been generating significant interest among investors and environmental organizations around the world, mentioning my impressive track record in cybersecurity and referencing my $35 million exit from my previous company, which had become something of a legend in tech circles focused on clean energy applications and sustainable technology development. The way she spoke about our collaboration made it clear that I was not just another contractor or consultant, but a genuine partner and innovator whose contributions were essential to the success of projects that could literally change the world's approach to sustainable energy. She spoke enthusiastically about our new $180 million joint venture that had attracted international attention from investors and environmental organizations worldwide, describing it as potentially revolutionary for the entire renewable energy sector and praising my innovative approach to securing clean energy infrastructure against increasingly sophisticated cyber threats from state actors and industrial competitors who wanted to steal or sabotage sustainable technology advances. Victoria continued the conversation by discussing upcoming features about our partnership in major renewable energy magazines and trade publications, mentioning my scheduled keynote speech at a major clean technology conference in San Francisco where I would be presenting our latest security innovations to industry leaders and potential investors from around the globe who were interested in scaling sustainable technology solutions to combat climate change. She also referenced several high-profile environmental organizations that had expressed interest in our technology, including government agencies that were considering implementing our security protocols for critical infrastructure projects related to the national grid and sustainable energy distribution systems that could help the United States achieve its ambitious climate goals. As Victoria spoke with obvious respect and admiration for my work and achievements, treating me as an equal in a conversation about technology that could literally save the planet, I watched Olivia and her friends standing in stunned silence, their faces cycling through confusion, disbelief, and dawning realization as they processed the fact that the man they had just been publicly humiliating for his modest appearance and supposed lack of ambition was actually a multimillionaire entrepreneur with international recognition in one of the most important and lucrative industries in the world. Other gallery attendees began recognizing me and pulling out their phones to search for articles about my innovations and business ventures, creating a buzz of conversation throughout the space as people realized they were witnessing an interaction between two of the most influential figures in renewable energy technology development, and the atmosphere shifted from the casual networking of a holiday party to something approaching awe at the unexpected celebrity in their midst, with several people discreetly trying to position themselves to overhear our conversation about projects that were being discussed in boardrooms and government offices around the world. Following the gallery incident, Olivia desperately tried to salvage our relationship through frantic apologies and elaborate explanations about social pressure and peer influence, but her focus immediately shifted to how my wealth could transform our lifestyle and social status rather than addressing the fundamental damage that had been done to the trust and respect that had formed the foundation of our relationship. The morning after the party, she showed up at my apartment with expensive coffee and bagels from an upscale bakery downtown, looking sheepish and contrite as she launched into a carefully rehearsed speech about how sorry she was for not defending me and how her friends had pressured her into acting in ways that weren't true to who she really was inside, as if peer pressure could excuse participating in the public humiliation of someone she claimed to love. However, within minutes of her apology, the conversation had pivoted to excited suggestions about how we could upgrade our living situation now that she understood my actual financial position, casually browsing luxury car dealerships on her phone while explaining that we could easily afford something much nicer than my practical Honda Civic that had served me perfectly well for years. She began showing me photos of elaborate engagement rings her newly engaged friend had received, making comments about how we could afford something even more impressive now that money wasn't an issue, completely missing the point that her behavior at the gallery had revealed fundamental incompatibilities in our values and priorities that had nothing to do with my bank account balance or ability to purchase expensive jewelry. Every conversation became about upgrading our lifestyle and social status, with Olivia unable to understand why someone with my resources would choose to live modestly when we could easily afford a luxury high-rise apartment in downtown Phoenix with city views, expensive restaurants every night, and the kind of lifestyle that would impress her judgmental friend group and elevate her status in their materialistic social hierarchy. When I tried to explain my values and the reasons behind my lifestyle choices, particularly my experiences watching wealth destroy my family during my teenage years and the deliberate decision I had made to prioritize character over conspicuous consumption, she interpreted my reluctance to spend money as some kind of psychological test or issue rather than a fundamental difference in our approaches to life and happiness. She seemed genuinely confused by my preference for our small apartment, thrift store shopping, and modest restaurants, treating my financial restraint as something to be overcome rather than a deliberate choice based on hard-learned lessons about what actually mattered in life and what led to genuine satisfaction versus empty materialism. The relationship deteriorated rapidly as I realized that Olivia was now dating my bank account rather than me as a person, with every suggestion and plan aimed at proving our success to her toxic friend group rather than building something meaningful together based on shared values and genuine connection. She started researching expensive vacation destinations, designer clothing brands, and luxury experiences that would photograph well for social media, completely abandoning the simple pleasures that had originally brought us together in favor of impressing people whose opinions shouldn't have mattered to someone who truly loved me for who I was rather than what I could provide. When I suggested we continue our tradition of cooking dinner at home and watching documentaries, activities that had once represented intimate bonding time for us, she would roll her eyes and mention how we could afford to eat at the city's most exclusive restaurants, missing the point that I enjoyed our quiet evenings together not because of financial necessity but because they represented genuine intimacy and connection that couldn't be purchased at any price or replicated in expensive establishments where the focus was on being seen rather than actually connecting with each other. I ended the relationship when I finally realized that Olivia fundamentally could not separate my worth as a person from my financial status, despite her protests about loving me for who I was rather than what I could provide materially or the lifestyle I could fund for her benefit. The conversation happened on a quiet Tuesday evening when she suggested we look at luxury condos downtown, showing me listings on her laptop with the same excitement she used to have for finding vintage books at used bookstores or discovering new hiking trails that didn't cost anything but offered genuine adventure and connection with nature. When I gently explained that I had no interest in moving from my modest apartment that had served me perfectly well and held so many meaningful memories of our early relationship, she looked at me with genuine confusion and asked why I would choose to live like I was poor when I could afford so much better, as if the size and cost of one's living space was the primary indicator of life satisfaction or personal success. That question crystallized everything that had gone wrong between us since the gallery incident, and I realized she would never understand that my lifestyle choices weren't about financial limitations but about values and priorities that she couldn't comprehend no matter how many times I tried to explain the lessons I had learned from watching wealth destroy my family. The social aftermath proved brutal for Olivia, as her friends immediately returned to their previous pattern of subtle mockery and backhanded compliments, now criticizing her for letting a millionaire slip away and treating his departure like a missed lottery ticket rather than the end of what could have been a meaningful relationship based on genuine compatibility and shared values. Chelsea made snide comments about how Olivia had fumbled the best financial opportunity she'd ever have, while Arya suggested that she should have been smarter about securing the relationship before revealing her true priorities and materialistic nature, as if love was a business transaction to be negotiated rather than an authentic connection between two people who appreciated each other for who they truly were. Meanwhile, I found genuine professional fulfillment as my solar energy partnership with Victoria Chen exceeded all projections and received recognition from environmental organizations worldwide, validating my choice to use my wealth for meaningful innovation rather than status symbols or impressing shallow social circles that measured worth by material possessions. The breakthrough storage technology we developed together began attracting attention from major utility companies and government agencies, creating opportunities for large-scale implementation that could genuinely impact climate change solutions and help transition the world towards sustainable energy systems that would benefit future generations. I continued my modest lifestyle while funding sustainable technology startups that traditional investors overlooked, finding genuine satisfaction in building solutions for environmental challenges rather than accumulating luxury possessions or trying to impress people whose values didn't align with mine and who would judge me based on superficial markers of success rather than meaningful contributions to society. The irony wasn't lost on me that as Olivia struggled with the social consequences of losing someone she now realized was financially successful, I was building something that actually mattered in the world rather than just looking successful to others who cared more about appearances than substance, creating technology that could help save the planet while she was left explaining to her materialistic friends how she had let a multimillionaire slip through her fingers because she couldn't appreciate authenticity over affluence when it really mattered.